In this lesson, we will introduce security policies. We will create a simple rule for our users to access the internet and enable them to access the internet. To write a rule, we come under the Policy tab. Here we create our rules by clicking the Security tab. Here we have two rules in default. One is intrazone default and the other is interzone default. What is the difference between interzone and intrazone? We created sub-interfaces in our previous lessons and we put all of these sub-interfaces we created in the inside zone. So we put our VLAN 11, VLAN 12, VLAN 13 and 172.16.0.0 subnet in the inside zone. Users in the inside zone can communicate with each other by default. If you want to interrupt the communication between these VLANs, you need to create a policy, or you need to take these subnets into separate zones. By default, intrazone allows any, that is, all traffic between interfaces in the same zone is not blocked. Interzone, on the other hand, blocks the traffic between zones by default, that is, if you want to make a traffic from inside zone to DMZ zone, it is blocked by default. When you want to make traffic from inside to outside, it is also blocked by default. In other words, if you choose interzone for the rule type here, it means that you are creating a rule between zones. If you choose interzone as the type, you create a rule within the zone. Now let's create a rule and let users on subnet 172.16.0.0 access the internet. Here below we click Add. Let's give our rule a name. Let's call it LAN to WAN. Here I choose the rule type as interzone because we will go from a different zone to a different zone, so I choose interzone. Let's come to the source section and select our source zone. Our source zone is inside. Our source address is 172.16.0.0. Since this subnet was not here before, I create a new object by saying new address. Let's name our object inside 172.16.0. Let's write our subnet here. Let's not forget to write the subnet mask as well. You can also create this address object under the Object tab here. We do not add source user after adding our source address. We will enable these users in our next lessons. Then we will also use our source users. Now we will create rule based on IP address. Our destination zone is outside. We're leaving it at any because we don't know where to go online. Let the application part stay in any. When we do application filtering, we will process these as well. Let's come to the service part. Here we choose select. We say add. We need to add HTTP, HTTPS and DNS. Since there is no DNS in default here, I create a new service for DNS by clicking on the service section. DNS uses UDP 53 port. I add DNS service by saying OK. Since our source port will be dynamic, you don't need to write a source port, just write a destination port. After adding 3 services, I come to the action section. Here I choose allow in the action section. You can also set the log here. Should logs be recorded when it starts or when it ends? I want the logs to be recorded when the traffic starts here. We add the policy by saying OK. Our source address is 172.16.0.0. We did not specify an user and device. In the destination section, our zone is outside. It can be any place. We did not specify an address. We allowed DNS, HTTP and HTTPS in the service. We did not allow other services. When you say adjust column here, it adjusts the columns here regularly. When you want to add or remove the columns here, you can click anywhere and add the row you want here when you come to columns. For example, here is rule usage first hit. You can add it here if you want. I'm removing this column now. We don't need it right now. Here you can also set the columns. Now we have written our policy. After writing our policy, we will make our rule commit and print it to running config and make the rule work. Our settings have been loaded successfully. Let's close our window. With this policy we wrote, the users in the 172.16.0.0 subnet need to access the internet. But now users cannot access the internet, because we do not have any NAT configuration. We will also do our NAT configuration in our next lesson. Now let's go to our user, let's see if he is on the internet or not. Now I came to client 1 side. Let's first check the IP address of your device here, then let's ping to see if we can access the firewall or not. After pinging, we check whether there is access to the internet. I'm typing it config/all. You can see that our IP address is 172.16.0.144, where our default gateway is also the IP of our firewall. Now let's ping the firewall and check if it has access to the firewall. Now we have access to the firewall. If you remember, we have created an interface management profile so that we can ping the firewall. If you create an interface management profile and do not allow ping, you cannot ping the firewall. You must have this set as well. Let's get out of here and open our internet. Let's write any page address. As you can see, we do not have access to the internet at the moment because we wrote the policy, but we cannot log out to the internet because we did not configure NAT on the firewall side. Now let's switch to the firewall side again. That's all we will tell you in this lesson. I told you how to write a rule simply, and we finished our lesson by talking about what default interzone and interzone do here. See you in our next lesson. Bye.